so we get kind of two perspectives on this. And so when you investigate this, what you learn is that some of the things we hear in popular culture are not rooted in history. For instance, the story that we typically hear is that Mary and Joseph go on a donkey to Bethlehem because there's a census, and this is the city of David. He's a descendant of David. So they take this donkey. She's on the verge of giving birth. They get there. The evil innkeeper says, "There's no room at the inn. Go away." And so they go into a cave or a stable. She gives birth, and they put the baby in swaddling clothes in a manger. That's the story we hear.
Right.
But it's not really what took place.
Right. What did you find out?
Well, what I found out is that in the first century Jewish culture, it would have been an abomination. It would have been unthinkable for anybody to turn away a pregnant Jewish woman who's about to give birth. And
You've been ostracized.
Totally. There'd be shame brought upon the village. And so that clearly isn't what happened.
Right.
But what also is interesting is there probably was no inn, and there probably was no innkeeper. Bethlehem was a small town. It wasn't even on a major highway. And so as a result, there probably was no commercial lodging in that vicinity. But the word that Luke uses to describe the place that they were looking for was Katalima. It had been translated by some people as an inn, but actually, when you go back, it means a spare room.
Right.
And so in the first century, the way the housing was, there'd be one big room, and there'd be kind of a little step down into a smaller room. In the smaller room is where the animals would be kept at night, and the floor was slanted to easily clean it. So the last thing at night, the animals were brought in, the donkey, a couple sheep, maybe a cow, were brought in there. There was a manger in there, in other words, into the floor, some hay for them to eat. The upper part of the room, the larger part, was the family area. That's where the cooking took place, the sleeping took place. They also had a manger there because sometimes the animals would come up the stairs and eat there. So the word Katalima refers to a guest room, a second room that was sometimes built to the property, and it had an exterior, a separate exterior entrance. That's the Katalima that Luke's referring to, a guest room. And so what apparently happened, and the historical account says, that as they came into the community, there was no room in the guest room for Mary. And so she gave birth in the family room.
Right.
Not a stable, not a cave, but in the family room. And there is a manger there. And then when Jesus was born, he was wrapped in swaddling clothes, and he was put into that manger, which consisted of clean hay.
Right.
So it's quite a different picture. And this question of whether or not she was on the verge of birth, I think, is misleading too, because the way it's phrased in Luke's account is that after they were in Bethlehem, the time came for her to have the baby. We don't know if that was 5 minutes after they got there or 5 weeks after they got there. So this idea that she was on the verge of birth actually comes from a second century writing that is based on legendary accounts and is not historically
Proto-Evangelium.
Yeah.
James.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah. The fact is that we've gotten off track.
Yes.
And people have expanded on that. But when you came back to the actual words, even go back to 1335, there are translators, Christian translators, that said the same thing that you're saying right now.
That's right.
Okay? And the fact is John Wycliffe was one of them, I think of it.
Yes.
So
that's right. In 1395, he actually did a translation in which he translated as room, guest room, or chamber.
That's right.